clearly excited to bring in our next guest, KPMG Chief Economist Diane Swonk. Diane, it is always a pleasure to have you, especially on Fed Day. Your takeaway from and your thoughts on really what you heard from the Fed chair.
Well, I think you really summed it up. Wait and see. This is a Fed in no hurry to preemptively cut, with unemployment still at 4.2%, despite what we've seen in confidence both in the business sector and in the consumer sector, and that's because of those fears of stagflation. They laid them out right there center in their statement, that the risks to inflation and unemployment were to the upside. He also wouldn't sort of speculate ahead of time about what kind of an increase in unemployment and what kind of an increase in inflation would force the Fed to move. And I think that's important as well, because this is a Fed that is trying to see how much we can look through or not the increase in inflation due to tariffs. They're also a Fed that he admitted himself, and was very open about it, that, hey, they were late on the uptake on inflation coming out of the pandemic, and we're still dealing with that inflation cooling now.
You know, it brings me to another point that he said, where he said the tariffs may cause a delay in our goals for maybe about a year or so. And he said that this is a situation where we can't be preemptive or act preemptively because we don't know how the data is going to turn out. I'm assuming he's talking about preemptive cuts, but if you really start to see higher inflation that is more than just a one-time price adjustment from a tariff, is there a scenario where you see no cuts or maybe, I don't know, a hike? How do you think about that?
I think the threshold for a hike is extremely high. That said, what kind of situation would get us there? It would be not only the tariff increase in prices and something that caused a more secondary bout of inflation like we see in emerging markets. We did see that sort of bond market meltdown that we saw after the initial tariff announcements, when the dollar depreciated. That depreciation in the dollar, if it were to continue or accelerate in any way, could cause, with a lag, another bout of inflation down the road. That's something we usually only see, again, with emerging markets or developing economies, not large developed economies. We also saw something similar to that in the wake of Brexit, and that's something many people are looking at this as a similarity to.
He also mentioned that consumers are spending, even though that spending is shrouded in downbeat sentiment. How should we be weighing the hard data, which looks okay, versus the soft data, the sentiment surveys, which are deteriorating?
Well, I think he made a very good point here, and that is, it is worrisome to see what happened to consumer confidence. We're within a nanosecond, a little bit of a hair from confidence being low enough that it actually, the deterioration portends a recession. It's about 0.7 basis points on the Consumer Conference Board in 3-month deterioration. Anytime you see it over 20 points, we have seen a recession erupt within the next 6 months with that kind of deterioration in confidence. We're not there yet. And he's looking at, they've got a lot of access, as do we, to ongoing credit card receipts, which he even mentioned there. And with a slowdown, that does not mean we're necessarily seeing a contraction yet. And we don't think there's a contraction yet. What we're worried about is one forming in the second half of this year.
You know, on that note, this is a Fed chair who has had a president urge him to cut rates. I want you to take a listen to what Powell had to say about that in response.
Doesn't affect our doing our job at all. So we're always going to do the same thing, which is we're going to use our tools to foster maximum employment and price stability for the benefit of the American people. We're always going to consider only the economic data, the outlook, the balance of risks, and that's it. That's all we're going to consider.
Your thoughts?
Well, that's exactly what the Fed chairman should be doing and should be saying. That's why it's so important to have an independent Federal Reserve. And I also think this is important because I've watched several Fed chairmen. I first met Chairman Greenspan when I was very young in my career. I've seen many a president not happy with a Fed chairman, either behind the scenes or more overtly, as we've seen more recently. But I think that's important, is that they stay the course and do what they need to do. I do think it's important that you brought up earlier, listen, He said, we don't tell Congress what to do with fiscal policy, nor should they tell us what to do with monetary policy. And there was that chuckle out of it. And I think that's important because he's staying in his lane. He's staying in his lane, in fact, more than other Fed chairmen have. Chairman Alan Greenspan was very involved in fiscal policy behind the scenes and trying to get deficits down. He does not see that as one of his jobs. And I think that's a very important place to be right now. And he's been told many times by Congress, too, that he, criticized. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. That's an important line to keep out there because he's working for the American people. That's his job. He cannot bend to political whims. Otherwise, those chairmen who have, Arthur Burns in particular under the Nixon administration, that helped to stoke the flames of stagflation in the 1970s.
Well, we so appreciate your time and glad that we can chuckle as well during some of these press meetings. Diane Swonk, thank you.